Sony's PlayStation VR2 is everything the original should have been. Straight from the box, it's so easy to set up. Perfect for those times when you want to play a VR game right away. Just plug in, get the equipment on, and play. In comparison, the original PlayStation VR was a disaster. It had so many wires and a converter, and sure, once you knew how to hook everything up, it became faster to do so. But it never had that enjoyable jump in and play experience. It did give the PlayStation Move a second chance and gave use to the PlayStation camera, but it was 3 separate pieces brought together to make it work, and it all felt disjointed. When it launched in 2016, VR was a hot topic everyone was investing in. Yes, there were better options on the market than the PSVR, but Sony did an excellent job supporting and publishing games for it. Sony has a habit of experimentation, for better or worse. We've seen the likes of the Pocket Station, iToy, PlayStation Move, PlayStation Vita, PlayLink for PlayStation 4, all these and more have introduced new ways for players to play games. Like any trend or gimmick, these come and go and people move on. Typically, Sony will drop support and move to their next experiment. However, Sony was all in on the PlayStation VR. We saw games like Blood and Truth, Everybody's Golf VR, and Astrobot Rescue Mission. Even your standard games had some sort of VR mode, from Gran Turismo Sport to Concrete Genie and Dreams. Then the opposite can be said of the PlayStation VR2. Now, don't get me wrong, there are many games offered. It's quite impressive really, and more games continue to come out, so that's a good sign. But Sony themselves have shown a lack of commitment. So far, Sony have released 3 VR games, the first being Horizon Call of the Mountain. I will say this is the first PSVR2 game you should play. It fits itself snugly into the Horizon story, but you don't need to know anything about the series to enjoy it. The second was a free update to Gran Turismo 7 that includes a new VR mode. And finally, we have Firewall Ultra. On the PlayStation VR, Firewall Zero Hour was a surprise hit. The game was praised with overall positive reviews. Firewall Ultra, not so much. What's even worse is that its developer, First Contact Entertainment, shut down not so long after. This wasn't because of the game or its performance, but rather a lack of support for VR within the industry. That statement alone says everything we're seeing with PlayStation VR 2. Major publishers are not developing for it, let alone the audience isn't there. I've watched many of these showcase reveals. Whenever a VR game pops up, people don't like it. They don't care and they want to see the next game. Which brings us to some of the major issues the PlayStation VR 2 has been facing. The first issue is the price. $550 is a lot to spend. $600 if you want to bundle in Horizon Call of the Mountain. Keep in mind, a PlayStation 5 console with a disc drive is only $500. It's a lot of money to ask from consumers. That's already going to limit who is going to buy it. A second issue has been the lack of native backwards compatibility. Now this is impossible and people need to realize it. The PlayStation VR and the PlayStation VR 2 are completely different. What accessories the PSVR needed, the PSVR 2 doesn't use. However, we have seen developers update old PSVR games with new PSVR 2 versions like Moss and The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. Sony hasn't taken this chance with any of their old PSVR games. An easy, free update would make many of these more accessible and not trapped to an old headset. And of course, as I've said, a lack of games from Sony. They made the hardware, they should be the leader in showing us how it can be used. Which has led us to the present. Sony has finally added a number of PlayStation VR 2 games to PlayStation Plus, something I think has been needed. Sony have released a PC adapter to be used with the PlayStation VR2, allowing players to play Steam VR games. Really, it's a surprising move. There's a few catches and requirements that go with this, but it is something people have wanted for the longest time. There have been reports of PlayStation VR2 selling slowly, leading to a massive buildup of stock. Sony even expressed the high expectation for what VR was going to do for gaming, and not meeting these standards. We also have reports of Sony cutting back funding on the development of VR. Apparently, they only have 2 PlayStation VR2 games in development, which is more than I'm sure any of us ever expected, and it really has me curious at what these 2 games might be. Ultimately, this all adds up to Sony's lack of commitment and support. Imagine if Sony kept London studio and instead of working on a live service game, they made VR games. They would have been a great VR studio. We could have had a sequel to Blood and Truth because that game ends on a cliffhanger. Even a new PlayStation VR Worlds. Or if Media Molecule was able to properly release the PlayStation 5 version of Dreams as planned, we would have been able to use the PSVR 2. Even if something like Japan Studio was still around, they were a big supporter for VR. There are so many missed opportunities for Sony, just like there are so many games that skip over the PlayStation VR 2 and appear on MetaQuest or other VR platforms. It's an issue the original had as well. I'm surprised we're getting big, major games like Alien Rogue Incursion and Skydance's Behemoth, games the PSVR 2 needs, but then a game like Batman Arkham Shadow won't be on the platform. Even a game like Ultimate Swing Golf, which is developed by Claphands who made the Everybody's Golf series, would be a treat to have. We saw Everybody's Golf VR years ago, so it would be great to have its successor. Sony's biggest mistake was not scoring a deal with Valve to release Half-Life Alyx on the platform. I bet that game in itself would have been the push people needed to buy the PSVR 2. It's great people can play it now with the PC adapter, even Sony boldly advertises this, but it really was a missed opportunity. So in general, I wouldn't say the PlayStation VR 2 is a total failure. Sony doesn't care for it, but other developers do. Though it's clear that people aren't as interested in virtual reality as they once were. Sony's own lack of games and the introduction of a PC adapter shows how little interest they have. It's trying to repurpose the device so it's not a complete waste. It makes Half-Life Alyx and many other VR games available to play, but also a slap in the face to those who bought the PSVR 2 to play VR games on the PlayStation 5. I really do see the PlayStation VR 2 going the way of the PlayStation Vita. By that, I mean Sony has given it barely any support, and it's up to third parties and indie developers to keep it alive. The PlayStation VR 2 is a great experience. Horizon Call of the Mountain has been a major highlight. However, I don't think the full price of the headset justifies the games offered. If you do want to buy the PlayStation VR 2, save some money and get this on sale. PlayStation Direct has had the PSVR 2 on sale multiple times. I would buy the Horizon bundle, that way you have the headset and a game to start off with. Let us know your thoughts on the PlayStation VR 2 down in the comments. Do you think we can call this a failure, or is it just too soon? Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell to be notified about future content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.